For today's video, we're going to be doing something a little bit more random, and I'm just going to be specifically talking about Alex Galchenyuk and if I think he can have a monster year with the Pittsburgh Penguins, a fresh start for him, and he's most likely going to be playing with a lot of very talented guys, and I'm just overall going to be talking about if I think he can finally become at least somewhat of the player that he was drafted to be at one point by the Montreal Canadiens. But before we get into today's video, make sure you guys go down in the description, click on the links, and follow me on Instagram and Twitter. Also, the Patreon link is down there. I'm starting to use that a lot more. The first 11 patrons will be in a fantasy hockey league with me this season, so that should be pretty exciting. So if that is something you're interested in, click the links in the description below. But now, without wasting any more time, let's jump right into this video. So obviously, as everybody knows, Alex Galchenyuk was the third overall pick in the 2012 NHL entry draft by the Montreal Canadiens. And when they drafted him, he was seen as a player who was supposed to come in and be the future franchise, #1 centerman for that Montreal Canadiens team. And things really didn't work out that way. He did have some really good years with Montreal. He had a 30-goal season. He had 56 points in the 2015-16 season. That was his career high. And other than that, he was kind of just solid offensively. Never really had a great all-around game, but definitely was a good offensive player. But even though Galchenyuk did put up some solid numbers on different occasions with the Montreal Canadiens, he never really became the player that the Montreal Canadiens wanted him to be when they eventually selected him third overall in 2012. And then obviously last summer he was traded in a 1-for-1 deal straight up from Max Domi that sent Galchenyuk to the Arizona Coyotes. And Galchenyuk actually had a relatively solid offensive season with Arizona. And honestly, at this point, I think that's just what people have come to expect from Alex Galchenyuk, that he's just going to be a solid offensive player and not really anything more than that. And obviously Galchenyuk did get a lot of flack this past season, even though he had another solid offensive year, because of how good Max Domi was for the Montreal Canadiens. He had a better year in a Habs uniform than Galchenyuk ever had in his time with Montreal. And honestly, I don't really think that is too fair to Galchenyuk, because he was kind of in a tough situation after being drafted, being expected to come in and be a #1 center for such a big market like Montreal. There's definitely a lot of pressure there, and in my opinion, that was just a really tough situation for him to be in. And then obviously after his one solid year with the Arizona Coyotes, they did decide to move him when they acquired Phil Kessel, and honestly, I don't blame Arizona for that whatsoever. Yes, you are acquiring an older player, but Phil Kessel brings some star power to a team that definitely needs it. And in my opinion, Alex Galchenyuk is now in a really good situation. I think he does want to be a center at the NHL level, but he's not going to play center with the Pittsburgh Penguins as long as Evgeny Malkin and Sidney Crosby are healthy, because you don't want Alex Galchenyuk being a third-line center. If Evgeny Malkin or Sidney Crosby do go down with an injury, Galchenyuk can definitely slot in and play center minutes, to fill in the time while those guys are injured, if that does happen. But for the most part, I think he will be a winger with the Pittsburgh Penguins. And if Alex Galchenyuk could maybe even get on a wing with Sidney Crosby next season, he definitely could be in for probably the best year offensively of his career. And even if he's on a wing with Malkin and they both stay healthy for the full season, I think again he could put up career numbers in terms of goals and point totals. I mean, he was a 30-goal scorer on the Montreal Canadiens, and now that he's most likely going to be a winger for either Sidney Crosby or Evgeny Malkin next season, I really think the sky is the limit for Alex Galchenyuk, and there is a lot of untapped potential there. I mean, remember, he is only 25 years old, and this definitely could be a trade that looks fantastic for the Pittsburgh Penguins if Galchenyuk can maybe even realize his full potential in the next couple of years with Pittsburgh. And then down the road, you could look at this deal and say, wow, Pittsburgh made out really well in that trade, because remember, they did get Pierre-Olivier Joseph as well, who was a former first-round pick by the Arizona Coyotes, a defensive prospect who is probably projects as a top 4 defenseman when he eventually does make the NHL. And overall, I'm just really intrigued by this situation, and I'm very excited to see how Alex Galchenyuk can play in a Pittsburgh Penguins uniform. I'm wishing him all the best. I'm not a Penguins fan by any means, but I want to see him do well, because you never like to see these players who come into the NHL with such high expectations and not live up to the hype, and then that's kind of always hanging over their head. And Alex Galchenyuk was definitely an interesting situation. He was injured for the majority of his draft year. He only ended up playing 2 regular season games for the Sarnia Sting in his draft year, and that definitely kind of makes it a little bit more difficult to gauge where he's at as a prospect, heading into the draft, because they had to kind of base it off his rookie season for Sarnia, which he was fantastic. They also got a glimpse of him in the Ivan Halinka tournament heading into his draft year where he played for Team USA, and Craig Button actually said that Galchenyuk was Team USA's best player throughout the tournament, so that definitely did help his draft stock a lot. And in my opinion, he was kind of a high risk, high reward pick. He was a guy that they didn't see play a lot in his draft year. Obviously, like I said, he was injured, so they kind of had to base it off his rookie season where he showed glimpses of being an amazing offensive player, and I bet you Montreal just wished he would have came in and been that franchise centerman for them. But it didn't turn out that bad for Montreal because obviously now they have Max Domi to show for this draft pick because they traded Galchenyuk 1-for-1 for Domi, and that deal has definitely worked out really well for the Montreal Canadiens. But I'm very curious to hear what you guys think, especially if you're a Montreal fan. How do you think of Galchenyuk's play for your team ever since being drafted? And if you're a fan of the Pittsburgh Penguins, where do you think Galchenyuk slots in the lineup come opening night? Do you think there is potential that he does end up on a wing with Sidney Crosby? Because if he does, there's definitely potential for him to have a breakout season, and definitely a player you could look at in the later rounds of your fantasy drafts if you're a guy who likes to play fantasy hockey. That could potentially end up being a steal. So that is going to wrap up today's video. I really hope you guys did enjoy. I know this was kind of just a random video, but it was something that was on my mind and something I wanted to kind of turn into a video. And I have these type of thoughts a lot about, random things across the NHL. And if you guys want to see more videos like this, let me know down in the comments section below. I'll try to get back to doing the more creative videos over the next couple of days, but maybe I'll do some double uploading sometimes if I want to do a similar video to this style, and I have some other plans. So thank you guys all so much for the support lately. Like I said at the start of the video, make sure to go down in the links in the description, follow me on Instagram and Twitter, and also you can become a patron if you would like. Obviously you never have to, but the support definitely helps. And yeah, thank you guys so much for watching today's video. If you did enjoy, make sure to drop a like on it and subscribe to the channel for daily NHL content, and I will see you guys all in the next video.